Hey, that's pretty good. The Raptors defeat the somewhat shorthanded Cavs, but still possessing Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen Cavs, 124 to 121. They are now 1-0 on the season based on reports I've heard that the season starts new. Ha ha ha, very funny. Big win, all things considered. I don't even think everything broke right for them in this game. I think that there was a lot of stuff that is very easy for them to improve upon. And I think a lot of the stuff, a lot of the inherent advantages that come with how they kind of reshuffled the deck to make this team up look different, behave different, and win a little bit differently. This was a good game. Lots of fun stuff happened. Beating the Cavs. It's always going to be difficult when you have guys like Karis LeVert going for 31. Donovan Mitchell at 26 comes in a little bit below what below his expectations, I think. And the Raptors, they try out quite a few different things like these two guard lineups. They try, obviously a bunch of different stuff with Quickley in the spread pick and roll. They try a bunch of stuff with Pascal in motion. Scotty, my friend Bruno Passos, he covers the San Antonio Spurs, and he said that rebound that Scotty grabbed towards the end of the game was like a rebound you'd see in a basketball anime. It was fantastic. Pascal, obviously the North Star of this game, 36 points, 2 assists. Could have been more if he wasn't responsible for like half of the Raptors made threes in this game, going 5 for 8, 5 boards. It only took him 20 shots to get 36 points. Scotty, not his most efficient game, but he gives you 26 and 5 with a steal and a block. RJ Barrett, the 5 turnovers, ugly. We can talk about some of the, decision making that wasn't that good in this game, especially 5 turnovers, 1 assist, but 19 and 9 took 12 shots to get there. That's pretty good. Jakob, I thought, had a really good game. He started off the game super impressively on defense. And Emmanuel Quickley, I think, actually underperformed this game a lot. But I think that a lot of the reads are based on familiarity. He was killing his dribble a little bit too often. He wasn't able to get downhill. And that kind of stuff will progress as he goes forward. He is the hardest player to like immediately start fitting in, right? Because he's the starting point guard now. And it's hard to like acclimate to what everyone wants to do. RJ, super easy for him, right? He's mostly just trying to fit in and like transition. You could see in some of the lineups without Pascal there that when the offense would kind of bog down and they needed to go to something, RJ was like, I'll try and muscle to the rim. I'll see what I can get there. And it worked quite often. Not to mention he hit the 2 free throws to kind of not ice the game necessarily, but 2 clutch free throws. Fantastic. Pascal, yeah, 65% from the field, 62% from 3, 83% from the line. He was everything in this game. Defensively, lots of stuff to clean up. Gary Trent Jr. went 1 for 5 from 3, but I think that his process in this game was a lot better. He was all over the court. The shot making should catch up. Dennis Schroeder, a couple decisions late that I didn't really like in this game, but for the most part, getting 12 and 8, plus 12, stepping in off the bench. He still played 29 minutes. He still played more than Quickley, which I don't think will be the case in all these games going forward. But it's suffice to say the Raptors have a very strong top 7. That probably wasn't the case prior to this game, right? And having a very strong top 7 is a really good way to win games in the regular season. And we'll see how these things, stretch out over time, how things kind of, how they progress. But it's not the full Cavs, Darius Garland isn't there, who killed the Raptors last time. Evan Mobley isn't there, who is always passively providing a bunch of positive impact. And, shame on the Raptors for letting Merrill and George Niang kind of get their games off as well. But them's the breaks, man. Richard Pilsky says, contrary to popular belief, Pascal Siakam is good at basketball. Yeah, I would venture to say very good at basketball. He was nuts in this game, man. The shot making down the stretch was pretty clinical. A couple shots he took in the game, like in the flow 3-pointers, I would have liked to see him kind of turn it downhill. But in a game where you go 5 of 8, let him fly. If you're feeling it, you're feeling it. He hasn't been feeling it in many games so far this season. So let it ride, brother. But I was really, really impressed with the way he was able to attack in motion. That was maybe my favorite thing about this game. That's one of the biggest motivators of the Raptors change going forward, is that you hope Emmanuel Quickley will be able to inject a little bit more pace into what the Raptors do. And it's because if Dennis Schroeder, despite being a very quick guard, he moves through these sets pretty slowly. Scotty and Pascal both move through sets really slowly. And Quickley, he's supposed to be so portable. He's supposed to be able to kind of plug in and off in on ball possessions and in on off ball possessions, on a whim whenever he wants. You can kind of switch and make a lot of these proactive reads when you're switching what you want to run as far as like your primary action. Vinay says defense has no teeth at the point of attack. Pirtle is not that kind of anchor. Hopefully the teeth, they get sharper and do so with Emmanuel Quickley, who has had a lot of success as a point of attack defender on the Knicks. Now, that is also, kind of the Knicks. They provide their point of attack guys with a lot of help. They're very aggressive at the nail. They rotate hard. The Raptors have to get a little bit more into that as a defense. They were for a portion of this game. And I thought also that Pirtle was very, very strong defensively. Maybe not at the end of the game, but a lot of the shots that were made at the end of the game, if everyone's being honest with themselves, it's a lot of jump shots. A lot, like every once in a while, a guy turns it downhill. Yes, that's going to happen. You lose somebody in transition, sure. But as far as the defense, I think that they were able to funnel guys where they wanted to for most of the game. Sometimes it was that a guy was a little bit too quick and the help had to come too far over, and there's maybe a laydown available. But I think that Pirtle had a pretty good game, pretty strong. I know that Jared Allen, I don't think Jared Allen enjoyed himself a ton tonight. It was a good game for Allen, but I was pretty impressed with Jakob in this game. The core coverage, I think, was really good. And as far as, setting the edge in the pick and roll, the Raptors definitely found a really good mix of like ball pressure on Donovan Mitchell, different coverages. Like we saw hedge, we saw drop, we saw switch to blitz, we saw a couple different things. And that's all with a team that has 40% of their starters are new guys. And this is a team that you could tell early on there was quite a few miscommunications, even late in the game, miscommunications in guarding some of the 2-man and 3-man actions. This kind of stuff should be cleaned up over time, and you would hope. And I guess we'll see how that goes. But to keep it positive, to go back to Pascal playing like in the pace of the game, it's obviously going to make it a lot easier if you're pulling from three and hitting them, because a lot of NBA offense is kind of the way that you collapse and spray the ball out is meant to reward teams that hit threes. Teams are going to collapse into the paint because you want to take away all the healthy, happy layups that everybody wants. And then Pascal not having to turn down stuff, just being like, okay, there's a three here. I'm going to take it in the flow. A couple of them, he just like put it up and hit as well. But that's a big deal for his offense. He's not a great 3-point shooter. He's not even a good 3-point shooter, but he's better than he has been this season, if that makes sense. And kind of getting back up closer to like that 30% is really important for his game. And then additionally, I think that he had a really great sense of where Jared Allen was in the paint, where the help was, right? We saw a couple times, we've seen in past Cavs Raptors games where if it's Pascal playing against Jared Allen or Pascal against a number of different guys, if he gets the matchup he wants in a post up and he spins off, you see when he's going up with that right hand, the weak side rim defender, he'll sprint over, he'll time up the jump, and it'll be close to a goaltend because Pascal will put a lot of lob on it, or he'll try and get it to the glass. But these guys are like pinning it sometimes. And I think he has, or in this game, he did a really great job of, noticing where Jared Allen is. Something that LeBron James talked about before a lot of other players was that he times up and counts where the other team is in regards to their 3-second violations and will time his drives according to that. Pascal has said as much, and a lot of players have come out to say that recently. It's an important thing to take account of. And I think there was a couple where Pascal was able to spin comfortably to the rim, get there and finish without that secondary help because he's really paying attention to what Allen is doing in the secondary. This is Pascal's star stuff, all-star, all-NBA stuff, is that you pay attention to your primary, yes, but you're also always, knowledgeable about what the second level or the third level of the defense are doing to shade to you. And I thought he was masterful in this game, paying attention to that early on in the game, sticking that 18-foot jumper right in Allen's face. That was great. The fader that he hit over Donovan Mitchell late was great. And he had quite a few like release valve possessions where the Raptors, they were really, really struggling to get offense. And he kind of just stepped into it, found a shot, or collapsed the defense. As far as like the shot making around Siakam, in this game it wasn't that great. Like the Raptors, a lot of their best looks outside of Siakam came in transition. A couple good ones were like, RJ kind of grinding his way to the basket. Scotty is of course going to find a couple things at the very least throughout the game, and including a very similar play, left hand live dribble, that layup he made late, like big swooping finish, right? Like that was a fantastic finish, and a 2-foot gather on that one, which is different than what it was in games past, right? Had a chance, hit that layup, win the game, gathered a little bit early. Tonight, he used that extra dribble, paid attention to what the scout was on him in the past, changed it, and made a really great read as a dribble drive guy, getting all the way to the rim, finishing over Allen. That's what you want to see from your young star. It wasn't his game. This is a game that, like, you really, with Allen at the rim and Scotty, he's been the Raptors' best three-point shooter this season. He wasn't in this game, so his counter wasn't as easy in this game. He wasn't able to look at the Cavs defense and say, I know what I'm doing. I'm taking those threes in the flow. That's easy. He goes 1 for 5 tonight. It's not as simple for him. So you probably, if you want a bunch of possessions, if you want to make it work in this game, you have to pick your spots in pseudo transition. You have to pick your spots in transition, and you have to bludgeon the rim if you can. And then on top of that, you can go to the mid-range if you want. He hit the one like pick and pop mid-range jumper. He had, the contested hook shot, which he's always been fantastic at. It's a great way for him to supply himself with his own offense off of his own creation. But he was kind of in fits and starts trying to find his way into advantageous positions in this game. And so was Emmanuel Quickley, who we can talk about. Quickley, I think, started off the game really well. It's like a sexy little basketball play. Every guard who's ever been on the baseline, when they try and ice that pick and roll, like that side pick and roll, and you're like, okay, if you're going to send me on the baseline, I'm going to take it. And you kind of like, you bump, you shiver, and you wiggle, and you get down there, and just like the little floater, that was a really nice play from him. And the 2 threes he hit, great spot up, great sense. He's lifting to the right spot to support Scotty's action on the strong side. That's the appeal, right? That's the off-ball appeal of Emmanuel Quickley. The things that didn't work is that Quickley is not like an elite finisher at the rim. He's a small guard still. He's not super small. He has wingspan. He's 6'3". He's not, as small as some of the guards that the Raptors have been using or playing or whatever. But as far as how he's able to impact the game, he is a little bit longer, but still not big and still not the most bursty. He doesn't play above the rim or anything. There's a lot of craft necessary for his finishes at the rim. And while he's quick, he's fast. Teams are still going to play him to, like, they're going to contest hard at the rim. He has to make tough shots. In this game, he was not the tough shot maker. Not really. 5 of 13, he'll be better than that, but he is going to be, like, for the most part, below 45% from the field. He's not going to blow your mind with his efficiency, but what he is supposed to do is immediately be a good 2-man action guy with Scotty, and Jakob had a great pocket pass early on to Jakob, and then Scotty was in the corner. We see this is a cool progression, right? Because Jakob doesn't get the tag from Okoro. Okoro stunts to Jakob because Scotty has, after the start of the season, more shooting gravity. He's able to drag that guy, so he doesn't want to tag because people have tagged off of Scotty in the past. And as far as what they want to be able to do, as far as dissuading the roll, it's really important to be able to tag. You want to be able to blow that stuff up. And if there's a good shooter, as far as what the Raptors are trying to do in the corner, you can kind of dissuade people from tagging. And you can open up threes. If they do tag, those are threes you can hit. And in this game, they opened up like a little run straight to the rim. And Jakob did a fantastic job of just like banging it home. He had a lot of really nice finishes in this game, to be quite honest with you. And Jakob is not the most powerful finisher, but he's always been able to provide like a ton of finesse, right? He's always been able to bring that. And as far as like what the Raptors need to do with their point of attack stuff, we'll see what happens with Quickley and Pascal and RJ and Scotty. And I think Scotty is going to be the guy who ends up with the highest usage. He has been over the past however long. This was Pascal's game. Pascal had the counters in this game that Scotty didn't. But there's going to be games where it's not going to be so many counters for Scotty, but just Scotty kind of being like a dominant, hell yeah type of player. And as far as like what the Raptors are trying to do, we'll see. I saw some people mentioning like Phoenix Plays E says, I think you're underselling IQ as a finisher. So just like what cleaning the glass has him at is like, so he was 56%, 62%, 67% this year. So within 4 feet of the basket is how cleaning the glass designates it. He's at 57%, which is the 28th percentile for a combo guard. And, you know, in the short mid range, that's the floater stuff. He's always been quite good. He's been 50 and 51% the past 2 years. So the numbers can always be a little bit, you know, I think Basketball Reference does it within 3 feet. I like cleaning the glasses designation of 4 feet way more, especially since they measure it based on where you leap from. Within 3 feet is like nothing. You can attempt a layup and have it, you know, be under the guise of like a short mid range if you jump from far enough away, which Quickley did on a couple of these fading, scooping layups, for example. Dog2233 says Pascal always has the most usage. I think he's at like 25 and Scotty's at like 24 this season. That'll be a little bit different after this game, but they've been quite close actually. And as far as like touches, Scotty has had a lot more touches than Pascal this year, but Pascal obviously is used more as a scoring wing, whereas Scotty is used as more of a connective player a little bit more often. So the touches aren't exactly a great proxy to figure out what they're doing. Phoenix Plays E asks or says, I didn't see much Scotty and IQ DHOs. You expect more of that going forward? I hope so, man. I really hope so. There was, I think Lewis had that stat from last season where among the high usage two-man actions with the dribble handoff, Gary and Scotty were the 6th most efficient last season. And if you can find that type of efficiency with Gary and Scotty, I think that says that you're obviously, or you should be able to mine that play for way more with Quickley and Scotty. And then just to touch on Quickley, like he overextended himself as a driver a little bit. Some of the touch shots that he normally hits didn't drop for him tonight. They will going forward at a higher rate. Not all of them, but at a higher rate than they did. And then as far as like his decisions as a pick and roll player and as a point guard, I think that he picked up his dribble a lot more often above the break than he should have. He was killing plays, but that's familiarity, right? This is, you know, he's a great player who has talked about how coming to Toronto, he wants to stretch his legs as a playmaker a little bit more often, but he's also a guy who played in, you know, when we talk about that Knicks offense, it's a lot of ISO. It's a lot of like, go get me a bucket. That's what Randall does. That's what Brunson does. That's what Quickley does. And those guys all did it quite successfully. And they're looking for spacers to make it easier for those guys because they're not moving away from that style. That's why OG plugged in so easily into the Knicks and had an awesome game tonight, or in the afternoon. And geez, his defense looked a lot better. But as far as like Quickley, I think because the Raptors want to go through this like continuous motion, continuous screening offense, it's important that Quickley be a little bit more decisive going downhill and also keep your dribble alive so that the continuous motion can keep going so that you find something. And he killed a lot of actions early, and he won't do that forever. I think that's just an unfamiliarity with the scheme. And I'm very, very high on Quickley. I think that he is the most dynamic three-point shooter that the Raptors have had since it would have to be Lowry in like 18-19 or 17-18. He's certainly, I think, more dynamic than Fred. He's quicker, and I think that he has a wider range of different moves to get to his pull-up, and I think he'll be able to kind of manipulate the screen coverage more often. But in this game, like, they were able to throw hedges at him, kill his dribble. You know, we've seen it a million times. You come around the corner, and then you get the hedge, You pound dribble into the gather and you say like, okay, what am I going to do? You pivot, you try and go above the break the other way. It's not really the best thing. You want to like take the hedge in stride, go between the legs, come back the other way, see if your roller's rolling into space and make like a pass there. Or if they're like tagging that, if you can make the skip, that's like the best players, the best passers in the league. That's a Scotty Barnes pass, right? That kind of stuff I'd love to see from Quickley going forward. Also, kind of interesting. I know it didn't end up good later on in the game, but RJ Barrett had two really impressive skip passes. I know there's like skip passes, I think, are a little bit overrated at this point in time, but you still have to be able to make them. Because it used to be that, like, if you saw a prospect or a young guy make a skip pass, then you're like, oh, this guy's an elite passer. It was like that kind of thing. Like they could break the defense by making a good skip. Now defenses have been able to, especially the way they use the weak side zone, to account for that. And they're really clever as far as like court coverage and Xing out to recover two skip passes, all that kind of stuff. But if you want to be able to make reads all over the floor, it has to be in your game. And Barrett had a couple. He also bungled a couple. Like he had a bunch of turnovers in this one. And they had a 4-on-1 or a 4-on-2 in transition late in the game where he lost, like he tried to make the skip to the corner and he wasn't able to do it. There were a couple in the half court he had trouble with. And I'm excited to see what the playmaking chops look like going forward. I think, higher on Barrett than consensus, especially when you look at him compared to. Actually, I'll just answer this question from Phoenix Plays E. Do I think RJ's turnovers were a result of process or not being familiar with our spacing? The ones in transition, I think, is just like transition spacing is pretty inherent. You learn it from when you're like a little kid. I don't know. Some people call it Russian 5 ball is the one drill you run where you're like filling lanes and it's supposed to be quite intuitive. But as far as RJ, I don't think it was unfamiliarity. I think that there was a couple from Pascal, Scotty, and Quickley, as far as like, actually, I don't think Quickley had a turnover in this game, but Pascal and Scotty, when they're trying to get a sense of where their shooters are moving to, and Quickley and Barrett aren't necessarily making those moves to the same spot that they expect. Like Malachi, for all the things that he isn't, Pascal has a really great understanding. If he gets the dig from the wing, he knows where Malachi is going to shade to or lift to. Quickley and Pascal weren't really on the same page on a couple. RJ and Quickley weren't really on the same page on a couple, and Donovan got to cheat to the one, and then they ran out, and George Niang was able to get that layup in transition, maybe like 6 minutes or 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So there's those kind of reads that are affected by, the familiarity. But also I think RJ just didn't have a really, like there were guys spying him, like on the weak side, there's a hawk who's saying like, if RJ tries to get frisky with this, I'm going to jump him. And he got jumped and he had a bunch of turnovers. And I thought, just to get it back to the positive aspect of RJ's game, in this game, and maybe I'll just go to the tweet I wrote about it, but the cool thing about RJ is that like he doesn't have to be the full expectation of number 3 overall pick to be, a big success for this Raptors team. Like he has less creation expectation. He can take more shots in transition or pseudo transition, like the one where he got straight to the rim, the lefty finger roll where he bowled Karis LeVert under the basket. That, while there's a bunch of things that Gary can do as a shot creator with a jump shot, there's just like that Scotty's the only other player on the roster who can do what RJ did there, right? And then also, like, if he misses while he's rolling to the basket, he has that second jump to go up there, contend in air, and get like a putback, right? And so he has like a pretty good sense as a cutter, I find. I guess we'll see what happens, obviously, but RJ has a lot of stuff he can do, especially relative to what the Raptors were getting off their bench for a long time. These are new skills. And it's not like with Precious or Malachi, OG is obviously a huge loss in a number of ways, but as far as like Precious and Malachi, and you're playing, Gary and RJ in those spots instead, you're just going to get way more shot creation. And it can still be less than RJ was expected to create with the Knicks. And RJ can be expected to like take easier shots, easier looks. His 3-point shots in this game, in the flow. He hit one, good. He iced the game. Well, not iced the game. I'll erase that. But he hit 2 clutch free throws. He was able to get to the line a few times this game. Okay? He's able to bowl guys over in the lane. They can go to pinch post stuff for him if he has a mismatch. There's like a bunch of stuff there that you can work for. And as I've said before, coaches don't look at players and think, what can't he do? They think, what can this player do? How do I design the offense to get the most out of him? How do I put these players in positions to succeed? That is Darko's job, not to look at what the team can't do, but what they can and how to accentuate those skills. And RJ is in a pretty strong position to have his skills accentuated on this roster. I like that a lot. Big, not like a huge RJ fan, but higher than him on consensus. I think there's a lot of room for him to like find his legs here. And he just has to be, like he can be an okay starter immediately. He can get to like a good starter. And a good starter is fantastic if you're getting that return for OG. And if you think Quickley is a guard of any consequence, you can look at like the team control on these contracts. You can look at how you reshuffle the lineup to hopefully looking better as far as like the overall balance of it, where it's shot making, ball handling. It's more intuitive for them to play a certain level, the certain style of basketball that they want to. And if you're someone like me who thinks that Quickley can elevate despite not being like the best driver, despite not being the most impressive playmaker, can elevate to a higher level initiation guard with his shot making, right? Like that jump shot can really help elevate and move defenses around. I think that there's room for the Raptors to come out of this trade looking really impressive. And, Phoenix Plays E says, yes, pick 31 as well, if the Pistons are the worst. Mugarbe Lennon says, yes, Scotty and Pascal have some help. It looked that way in this game. It's like Pascal was obviously, he was the moon and the stars. He was the sun. He was everything. And he did it efficiently. He did it without like taking over the offense to a crazy degree. I was pretty surprised like he didn't get a single look down the stretch. I think that was wrong. I do think that the Raptors got a little bit crazy as far as their offensive decision making down the stretch. But as far as like Pascal, 36 in the flow of the offense, I think he found like a really good way to do it. And Scotty, not his most efficient game, not his biggest scoring game, but like just grinding and finding his way to offense a ton. 20 points, 5 and 6. It's easy, 1000 Eyes 85 says, speaking of tunnel vision, this dude doesn't interact with this chat at all. Let me throw on the glasses to look a bit more often. But the truth is, brother, I've been doing this podcast for years, and there wasn't a chat for a long time. There, like the more people listen on the podcast apps, so they miss out on the chat interaction. So I still have to keep it as kind of like a linear thing. David Burke says bald. No way. I'm bald in my Twitter. I'm not hat fishing you, brother. I'm bald in the Twitter bio, You just had to go look. Curly, who I suspect is the Curly, my dear friend, says Pascal was so smooth, nothing forced, found his spots. Ain't that the truth, man? I think that he was just like so fantastic in this game. I was really impressed with him. To speak about like the bench guards with Gary and Schroeder, I think that Schroeder played within the flow of the offense pretty impressively. There's always going to be, because he can turn it downhill, because he is like a shoot first guard a lot of the time. There's going to be stuff that there's going to be possessions where you look and you go, I don't know. That's always going to be part of his game. But there's also like a ton of stuff when you look at Schroeder finishing with 12 and 8, only 1 turnover. He's moving the Raptors through a lot of the possessions that they need to go through. He's moving the ball on to other guys. He's running through a lot of those rope possessions with Jakob. It's like, okay, we got the roll. We got the pocket pass. We got the tag. Make the pass to the corner. The defense is in motion. All this kind of stuff is, these are positives. And also like Schroeder, I find has a very, except late in games maybe, has a very strong sense of when to get Pascal the ball. And in a game like this where Pascal is cooking, I think he did like a pretty good job until the end of the game where Pascal, I think it was the last 4 possessions that were played in the half court, Pascal didn't touch it. But at the very least, you got that layup from Scotty, which was awesome. Yeah, Steph No, The Stefano of Sporting News says, thought it was interesting that Darko called IQ's number out of that timeout instead of Pascal with 2 minutes left. Rip DHO, page action for IQ. Yeah, I I don't hate it in a vacuum, right? Because you look at it as like, okay, this is a play. You put a shooter in motion. IQ has been getting, when he keeps his dribble alive, he can put it down, get it into the teeth of the defense, and you're comfortable with him there and his shot making there because as we looked at the stats earlier in this, this episode, 51 and 50% in the short mid range over the past 2 seasons. There's a ton of volume there, and you're comfortable with his off the dribble shot making, right? You're comfortable with IQ doing that. And there's also like Malachi Flynn was way more emboldened under Darko. A lot of players were way more emboldened under Darko. And Darko is a guy who he loves his guards. He might want to like embolden him. IQ to some degree, this is like his team along with Scotty going forward, probably, right? And so he got the look. As far as like, would I rather see it with Pascal versus IQ? I don't know. In these ones, you hope that they're able to, and you also maybe you don't know that Pascal is the second option, and Darko is thinking, well, they're probably going to show a lot of pressure towards IQ, and then we move on to a second look with Pascal, and then he can kill there, or maybe they go to like an empty side pick and roll, and there's a switch. Who knows what they're thinking? But it just ends up that like IQ is a guy who will call his own shot, and did, and Anu G says even IQ's misses look good. A few more of those could have fell in tonight, and I wouldn't have been surprised. But Kier Doyle says, "What did you make of random Thad 2 minutes?" I don't know, man. I think Thad probably we don't get Thad minutes once. We don't get Thad minutes once they sign whoever they are getting for I guess the final roster spot. I guess we'll see. Stefano says, more important question, where's the blazer/suit jacket? So here's the thing. I couldn't go to today's game because I just got back into Toronto today. Lewis was at the game tonight, and Isfandiar Barahaney, two dear friends of the show, and Blake and like all the people I love. But I wasn't able to go to tonight's game. And then the Raptors are on the road forever. So the Blazer/Emmanuel Quickley game will actually end up being like in the middle of January, if not like the 20th or something like that. So yeah. Richard Pilsky says, what did you think of Alvin Williams wearing a purple bow tie? Hell yeah. Purple's a good color. Vinay says, I actually liked Alvin's commentary today. I enjoyed the back and forth between Alvin and Matt because I agreed with Alvin to some degree, but I also agreed with Matt to some degree and I talked about this after the game where Scotty put up 15 threes is like, you do in some sense want to see Scotty going downhill more often. But on the other hand, 7 out of 15 threes is just insanely good offense. You can't turn your nose up at it. It's really, really good offense. The points per possession there is exactly what you need it to be. But also that, and I've talked about this before too, is that it's really interesting the difference in how Scotty is a good enough shooter to dictate hard closeouts right now. But teams still might want to make him shoot because the prospect of putting Scotty downhill as far as like fouls, playmaking opportunities, finishing ability, all those different multitudes of things might be more dangerous than his points per possession, even though he is like 38% from downtown. So teams, he might have a different guard than his statistics suggest because the idea of Scotty driving with an advantage into an empty paint, a semi-contested paint, it's tough. So you might, even if he is shooting a three well, you might want to have that controlled closeout. You might want to be chopping feet, the one hand high, the other hand low, protect the cross, from Coach Carter, however you want to frame it. But that's something that we might see happening. I guess, yeah. And so they were obviously, Alvin was talking about how Scotty needs to be driving more. And Matt was like, he made 7 threes, 7 threes is a lot of threes. And so they're both correct in some sense. Yeah. Manchild says, you guys got 2 inconsistent players. This is coming from a Knick fan. I have to say, it would make sense if Quickley was a little bit more inconsistent just because of the role he's been a part of for so long. and as far as, being like a spark plug scorer off the bench, I think it'll take him time to get to where his game wants to be, especially as a decision maker, especially since he will be the guy setting up the offense. You know, whether it's as much as Scotty or like slightly less, he's going to be doing it a lot, and he also has to be conscientious of getting guys looks in a way that he hasn't really had to be with the Knicks. So there might be some inconsistency there. And also a guy who is a little bit more reliant on like touch shot making and pull up threes as Quickley is. And he's not the best in the league, like maybe, Steph Curry and Tyrese Halliburton, who really supply and fuel offenses with those skill sets. It's going to be a little bit more consistent, yes. And then RJ Barrett, I covered him for Team Canada at FIBA. And I think most people who watch Raptors basketball also watched Team Canada, so they're well aware of like some of the inconsistencies. Manchild says we needed OG for defense. Talking to another chatter, I think OG. I think that trade was like could definitely come out as a win-win, especially if there's a guy we just saw tonight, Donovan Mitchell, who didn't have his best game, but who is as electric as they come, who may end up on the Knicks someday, and if OG is also on that team and they have like Randall, maybe Randall's there, maybe isn't. If they have Randall, Brunson, Mitchell, OG, like they're in a position to go out and try and win a championship. So OG, if they don't add anyone else and it's just OG for forever, then the Knicks, they're not making that leap probably. But they put themselves in a position through their front office, they can try to make that leap. So I like that trade for both teams. Anu G asked this a couple times. Thoughts on IQ's weak side defense? Thought he was pretty awesome rotationally and boxing out. Yeah, there were a couple things he missed on the weak side, but also you could blame Pascal Siakam for a couple of those. I guess I guess he is a guy like with wingspan. He's attentive. He was also back in transition defense. I think his off ball stuff is mostly pretty impressive. He is one of those guards who kind of like gets it, who's really in tune with the primary action, has a good sense of his spacing between man and ball, and when he can kind of get a little bit like, am I trying to contain on this play or am I trying to blow something up? And I think he rides that line pretty well. The extra wingspan helps with digs. The extra wingspan helps with like changing passing lanes that are going over top you and all that kind of stuff. And I'm excited to see Quickley because all of the testimonials are that Quickley is a strong defender at the point of attack. All the testimonials are that he is, definitely an above average defender at the guard position. And that was under Thibodeau. Now it's going to be under Darko. I hope that reputation doesn't go away from him. I hope to see like a bunch of impressive performances going forward. Yeah, but the Raptors, they won this game. Really impressive. Very happy with that. Since we have 400 people in chat, make sure to like the video. It's free. It'll help suggest it to other people, of course. And I guess I'll take like a couple listener questions before we get out of here. One from Ollie Dez says, Pascal playing like he wants to get traded or playing like he wants to stay? This is a funny one. So I'll give everybody the update on the Pascal stuff. Some of this is like stuff I've heard. Some of this was reported by Grange. Some of this was reported by, Mark Stein. Pascal is, as far as like what he wants to do, I think it makes sense from the player's point of view that if the Raptors were going to give him the 2-year extension, he would say no, because I can go out if I wait 3 months and get a 4-year extension. And that way he is getting paid till he's 34 instead of until he's 32 and having to do another like prove him contract at 32, right? And so that just makes complete sense from his point of view. As far as like in the summer, when other teams were courting Pascal, other teams, of course, they were like talking, and they don't talk because they can't talk, but they do talk, and discussions of extensions were had, and Pascal rebuffed from some teams. So he has, expressed a desire to stay in Toronto, and he would have signed with Toronto if they had given him that 4-year full max extension. And he can, if I don't think he'll make All NBA this year. I just really don't. I don't think he'll be in play for a Supermax or anything like that. But we'll see what happens in free agency. unless the Raptors made a trade beforehand. But as far as like Pascal playing to stay or playing to up his trade value, I assure you he doesn't give a damn about his own trade value. Yeah, it's all he does says, I think it makes sense for everyone to move on. Siakam can be legit on another team. Who can we sign in the summer? I can't answer any of those questions because it literally all depends on how the cap works out over the next, few weeks before the trade deadline, and then also the decisions that the Raptors make, between now and then, which is like a world away. Coco says, did Gary seem like he was re-energized or remotivated? He seemed more active. He certainly did. They took one of his rebounds away, but he was leading the Raptors in the third quarter. It said he had 7, but he ends up with 6 in this game, 2 offensive rebounds. He was whirring around, and also top blocking. That's the word. He played like a really impressive top block defense on some of the actions where the Cavs are trying to free up one of their shooters, like whether it's Strus or Merrill or Donovan Mitchell. And top blocking is basically like you sit on top of the action and you try and send the player downhill instead. It's important, obviously, for your big or your wing or whoever you're playing with, for them to also be cognizant that you are top blocking so that there's not just a back cut available. A lot of teams top block and have top blocked for years, Curry and Thompson, and both of those guys have made like an absolute killing on back cutting those actions. But the Raptors didn't get killed on one of those. And I thought that Gary had like a very strong game as far as like defensive activity. Even when he's having a strong defensive game, for him, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to gamble at not always opportune times, but he hit on some. And I think that his compete level in this game was really great. He made an impact on the glass. And as far as like his process, I thought that this was one of the stronger games from a process point of view that he's had, in quite some time. He shoots 3 for 10. He goes 1 for 5 from downtown. But I think as far as like what he was trying to do, this was a pretty good Gary game that could have ended up being a lot better if he had just shot it the way that, you kind of expect him to shoot. And that feels like about where I'm going to leave this thing. How's that? Pretty crazy that Boucher had no points and 1 rebound, no shot attempts in 11 minutes and 20 seconds. I guess that speaks to like, where the league is, or not where the league is, where the Raptors are with Barrett gets 19, Pascal gets 36, Jakob 14, Scotty 20, Quickley 14, Schroeder 12, Gary Trent Jr. 9. Like, there's just not a lot of shots to go around. Boucher is going to have to get his looks off of cuts. He's going to have to like make really great reads lifting as a shooter when he's on for a game. He's going to have to keep making those great baseline reads, especially he and Scotty have been able to link up on so many with that live lefty dribble from Scotty. The guy steps up from the corner to meet him. Boucher cuts baseline. You activate that cut. You see the numbers. I don't know what he looks for. There's a couple hallmarks that coaches will teach players. Like, you see the numbers, go for it. You see the logo here, you go for it. Or just timing cuts based on the structure of the offense. Like a burn cut here, a burn cut every once in a while can result in, a made bucket anyway. But that seems like a podcast. One more reminder. If anybody wants to like the podcast, it helps spread to other people. It's free. I so hope you enjoyed it. If you're new to Raptors Republic, go to raptorsrepublic.com. You will find the most in-depth piece on Emmanuel Quickley. It was written by Louis Satzman. It is tremendous. And when I say the most in-depth, it will give you numbers you will love. It will give you film you really, appreciate, and you'll learn about his game and how he fits in with the Raptors. And also, Raptors Republic is independent and credentialed, and we survive through a subscription base. And that is how we do it. That is how we pay our writers, our podcasters, etc., without being part of the duopoly of, cable or whatever the hell in Canada. So, go to raptorsrepublic.com and subscribe if you're into that sort of thing. I'm done plugging all this kind of stuff. Fun game, fun win. Thanks to everybody in chat for being insightful, engaging, and kind. You guys are the best. For the people listening on their walk or wherever the hell you listen to it, thanks for tuning in. And whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.